Greetings everyone! In today's episode, we'll be going over the level design process for the first couple of levels in the game, as well as implementing some of the more interesting UI features, so let's dive right in.
In our previous videos, we showed you all the special tiles and obstacles we planned for the game. Now that they're all complete, it's time to create maps. You may also remember from a previous episode that we created some maps. We had to scrap those. The reason for that is because those maps are a bit convoluted. We want to gradually introduce gameplay elements to the player so that they can get a good grasp of the game. So, in this video, we'll show you the first 6 maps, which you can call tutorial levels. First, we'll show you the full view of the map, what you'll encounter in them, and how to beat them. The first map, incredibly basic. A very thin map where you can already see the hole at the start. At the beginning of each map, our friend Rusty will slide into your DMs and give you instructions on how to beat the stage. Being the first map, you're going to learn how to move the ball and the scoring system. Rusty's exact monologue is still a work in progress, so until then... Our second map is an extended version of the first map with some obstacles. On this map, you'll be able to practice 2 things. One of them is your accuracy. Brute force in a random direction is cool, but a skilled aim shot is always better. The second thing you'll learn is how you can zoom out and have a better view of the map. Sure, a few seconds ago you've seen the entire map and it's not a large map to begin with. But later maps will be larger and seeing the bigger picture will help a lot. Map 3 is where you'll be introduced to the moving block. The layout is the same as the previous map, only without the static walls. For demonstration purposes, the moving block's movement is done using the animation player. This way, the sprite along with its collision layer are moving down 64 pixels and then back up. Here's what it looks like in action. Take your time planning your next move, and you can zoom out if it's easier for you. Here's a map that might be familiar if you've seen our older videos. We made it smaller and added some sand in the corner. Here, you'll also be introduced to 2 new game mechanics. The sand tiles that add more friction to your ball, and using physics to bounce off the walls. If you're not comfortable experimenting with physics, you can move in the sand pile and then go for the hole. Just remember, the more moves you make, the lower your score will be, lowering your chances of getting a high score of 3 stars. But to all you daredevils out there, go Wild King. Water tiles will be introduced on this map. If your ball sinks in the water, you'll return to your last position. Keep that in mind for later maps. Generally, I would advise you not to land close to a body of water. Not only will it make it harder for your next move, but each time you touch water, it will still count as a shot made, lowering your score. Finally, the last game mechanic, the windmill. I can't say for sure, but we think if there will be a windmill on a map, it will always be surrounded by walls, forcing you to go through it. But much like the moving block from before, all you need to do is wait patiently and plan your move. Due to the screen size, we recommend zooming out for a better view.
Let's set up the zoom button. I've already set up a few prerequisites in the scene. I've added a camera node to the level and another camera node to the ball. Also, here at the bottom of my gameplay script, I added a method to toggle between the 2 cameras. The method simply reverses the enabled flag on each camera. Now, back in my level scene, you'll notice 2 magenta rectangles. The smaller rectangle depicts the viewport of the ball's camera, and the larger rectangle depicts the viewport of the level's camera. Let's see this in action. I've bound the zoom method to the Z key on my keyboard. On every press, it toggles the active camera. What I want to do now is to add a button to the screen that will perform the same action. I'm going to create a new scene. The type will be user interface, and I'm going to call it overlay. I'm going to add a single node to the scene. It's going to be a texture button, which lets us create a button out of an image. Then I'm going to anchor it into the top right. Next, I'm going to rename my button for clarity and assign it a texture. I only have a texture for the normal state, but don't worry, if the other states are left blank, the normal texture will be reused. And finally, I'm going to add a bit of margin to the sides. Now I can add this overlay scene into my gameplay scene and... oh no, that doesn't look right. What's going on? Why is the button on the wrong side? What are those green arrows pointing to in the top left? Well, it turns out that if we want to incorporate a UI scene into a 2D or 3D scene, it needs to be contained inside a canvas layer node. I'm going to add one now and set it as the root node. The canvas layer node can either be here or in the gameplay scene, but I chose to put it here so my overlay scene is more complete. If we look at the gameplay scene now, we can see that the zoom button is exactly where we expect it to be. Great. Next, I'm going to create a new script. I'm attaching the script to the canvas layer node instead of the zoom button. You'll see why later. Then, I'm going to copy the toggle zoom method I showed earlier. Notice how in the code snippet I pasted, I'm referring to the level camera and ball as if they were in the scene tree. That's not the case anymore. In order to gain access to them, I'm going to turn them into script parameters. Now, I'm going to connect the pressed signal of my zoom button to my script, which will simply invoke the zoom method. I'll go back to the gameplay scene now, and in the inspector, I'm going to assign both the camera and the ball. The camera gets assigned as we expect, but the ball won't fit here. Looks like we should be a bit more specific with the parameter type. Let's give the ball a class name. I will naturally call it ball. Then, back in my overlay script, I'll change the parameter type from packed scene to ball. And try to assign the ball again. Excellent, it fits now. If we run the scene, we get a bit further, but the game crashes when I press the button. Notice the error message. It basically says there's no ball camera property on the rigid body 2D class. Looks like we should be even more specific. I'm going to expose a ball camera property on the ball class. Then, back in the overlay script, I'll adjust the code to reference this new property instead. Now let's test the scene again. Perfection! We have successfully implemented a toggle zoom button. That's it for today's episode. Join us next time for when we implement the tutorial system using speech bubbles. Make sure to give us a follow if you want to see how it turns out, or for some general Godot tips and tricks. Either subscribe here on YouTube or one of our many social media platforms. And that's it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.